As Amazon sellers, I think we can all agree that there is so much data out there to help us find profitable leads and analyze those profitable leads as well. Unfortunately, with all that information, you get overwhelmed very easily. You get analysis paralysis, and then all of a sudden, you decide not to purchase leads because there's just so much data, you don't know what's good and what's bad. My name is Alex with AC Flips, and in today's video, I'm gonna show you the exact data that I look at with every single lead. Now, of course, there's gonna be times where I'm looking at a ton of data, but most of the time on almost every single lead that I analyze, there are a few different categories that I'm looking at. And I wanna share those exact steps with you with some examples. So let's jump into it. I'm gonna go through two different listings. One is a standalone listing, the one we see here. And then I also have a variation listing because there's a little extra data that we need to look at. So I'm gonna break down both products, all the data that we need to look at for each product. So hopefully you guys can understand how to avoid some of the unnecessary information that is going to probably deter us from actually buying the product. So first thing we see is seller amp here. That's the data that's given to us right at the beginning here. I find it super helpful to have it right in vision of the product, right? We want to see what product are we looking at here. If it's a variation listing, we want to know all the variations, see the ones here. Basically what I'm looking at first is, does this product sell well, right? You got to ask yourself a couple questions. There's a ton of data here. There's going to be, an overwhelming amount of data. We can go to Keepa right away, but what is the first step that we need to decide if this product is actually worth looking into further, right? It's not even, is it worth purchasing? Is it worth looking at more data? Because if we spend a ton of time on a product that's not worth looking at the data because it only sells 2 times a month and there's 50 sellers on it, well, then we're just wasting our time completely. So we can see here, the BSR is 74K. It's by itself. So this is all of these sales, 130 sales a month that this product is getting goes to this one specific product. So that's a great sign, right? That's the first step, right? I want to know, does this product sell? And for variation listings, it's going to be really similar, but we'll talk about that later. So does the product sell, right? That's what we care about. It doesn't matter if we're profitable or not. If we could be completely profitable, we could make $100 a sale, but if it sells, like I said, 2 times a month and there's 50 sellers in the listing, what is the likelihood that we're going to get the sale here? That's what we care about. We want to get product that is going to sell. So we can see here 130 sales a month. So the next step could either be, let's look at the competition, right? What is the likelihood that we're going to sell? Like I just said, can we sell this product? Does it sell? So we answer that question. It does sell. Can we sell it, right? So that's what we want to find out next. So we can either look at competition on Keepa. We can scroll down on Seller Amp. We'll do both because I think both data points is important. Both are third-party sources of information from Amazon. So we want to kind of piece everything together to help us make an informed decision. We don't want to make uninformed decisions and buy stuff that's actually bad because we didn't look at enough data. We want to look at all the right data and then help us make an informed decision here. So we can see that there is 36 sellers on the listing. Is that saturated? Could be, but we got to see what's everyone priced at, right? How many are actually priced competitively here? And that's going to help us determine, the actual competition on this listing. So we can see that the buy box is sitting at 42.24. So anybody below that is competitively priced, right? So we have 3 sellers below that. We have 1 at the buy box. Anything basically like 5 to 7% higher than the current buy box is probably priced a little bit too high. Now, the Keepa chart might tell us differently, right? We might see some FBA sellers that are getting the sale at a little bit higher of a price than, the FBM sellers. If you notice at the beginning, this is a meltable product, so we should see hardly any FBA sellers. There are 16 of them, but again, I think those sellers are probably going to drop off the listing pretty quickly here since we're into meltable season. So basically, like I said, the Keepa chart might show us that we're fluctuating between FBA sellers at a higher FBA price, at a higher buy box price, or FBM sellers at a lower buy box price. But for right now, we're just going to assume that these FBA sellers are going to drop off the listing. So there's actually less competition than we might think here. And a lot of these FBA sellers don't have a ton of stock either. So another piece to the puzzle here, how many sellers are priced competitively and how much stock do they have? So we can look here and see that, 12 stock, 4 stock, 5, 2. So these sellers don't have a ton of stock. We're not seeing, sellers with 30, 40, 50 units, which is a great sign, right? So how many are actually priced competitively here? I would say maybe 6. Once you get up to the high 44 range, unless the chart tells us differently, right? We'll look at the chart soon. But right now, it's just kind of telling us that if we're priced around that $42 mark, we should be competitive with around 6 other sellers. So 7 sellers competition, you split that 130 sales between 7 sellers, we can sell this pretty decent amount of times. So, all right, now that we understood the competition on this product, next question you want to ask yourself is, what is the likelihood that we can actually sell at the price that we want to sell at? So that $42 range, what is the likelihood that we're going to be able to sell at $42 when we purchase the product? It takes a couple days to show up to the house. We got to send it into Amazon, right? This is a meltable, so it's not so FBM, we can list it right away. But if it was FBA, right, we need to understand what's the lead time here before it actually gets listed. If that's 2 or 3 weeks out and we expect the price to drop, we have to take that into consideration whether we still want to sell this profitably, whether we can sell it profitably. All right, so now we're looking at the Keepa chart. So first thing I'm noticing is that offer count has gone up a lot recently. Again, I don't think that's a huge issue on this meltable product because we do see a lot of FBA sellers, and multiple season started April 15th. So I'm actually surprised that there are still so many FBA sellers in the listing, but those will drop off really soon. And maybe they already have dropped off. I guess we could look at other sellers here. It looks like there's still 36 of them. So that's accurate, but the FBA sellers should drop off because Amazon creates removal orders for a lot of the meltable products right at the cutoff, which is April 15th. So we can already start to see the sellers fall off a little bit. And we can see that Keepa is telling us that this sells 200 times per month. So that 130 estimate actually might be a little low. Maybe it's going to drop off now the multiple season hits and these products, are more likely to melt and have high return rates. So people don't want to sell it as often. So maybe we see the rank go up a little bit, but either way, it says it's selling 200 times per month. So that's great for us. If there's only 7 competitive sellers, it sells 200 times. We should be able to get quite a few sales on this type of product if we're priced competitively, which that's the plan. So we see this price, right? It's pretty consistent. So I'm seeing in the past, we're kind of sitting at the low price. But if we're profitable at that low price, then, that's not the end of the world here. So $40 seems to be that low. We're kind of creeping up recently. Again, we're going to remove that FBA sellers because we just want to see, we're going to merge fulfill this if we were to purchase it. Currently sitting at $41.93. In the past, it's been a little bit higher, $44, $48. We've seen it all the way up at 50 in the 50s before, but that was when the product when it was a little colder out. Product had less likelihood to melt, less competition, obviously. So what I'm seeing here is that competition is starting to go down. Price is starting to go up slightly. We did bottom out at like $40, but if we're profitable at $40, I don't see why we wouldn't want to purchase this because we see the price starting to go up. We see offer count dropping off, and that should continue to drop off with the FBA sellers falling off this listing presumably pretty soon. So there's one more step we need to do to analyze this product fully, but let's recap what we looked at so far. So the first question you need to ask yourself when you get to any listing, does the product sell? We look at the rank of the BSR estimated sales. We see that this product sells 130 times per month. Keepa says that it actually sells around 200 times per month. So the data makes sense, right? We're seeing that it actually sells. It's not a really bad rank, no matter what profit we're finding on this. If the product doesn't sell, we're not going to make that profit. So that's the first step. Next step is understand the competition. We scroll down on the seller amp chart and we can see competition is pretty high, but the FBA sellers should drop off the listing. And actually the sellers priced competitively, there's not that many of them, right? A lot of these sellers are listed way too high. They're not going to get the buy box. So we can assume that there's really not a ton of competition at this profitable price here, which is good for us. So the competition isn't super high. It's not enough to make us decide not to purchase this product. Hope that makes sense. And then the next question we ask ourselves, what is the likelihood that we're going to sell at the price that we think we want to sell at? So that $42 price range, is it reasonable to think in 2 weeks when our product arrives to our house, we list it on Amazon, that we are still able to achieve that $42 price? And it looks like the data, we hit a low a couple days ago, but we see that going up. We see the offer count starting to go down. So it is reasonable to think we could probably sell this at $42. Now, the last step, one of the most important steps that we need to understand every time we're analyzing products is, what is the likelihood that more sellers jump on this listing? So when you found it profitably, right? If we're finding this for $21, how easy was that to find? What is the likelihood that other sellers are going to find it at that $21 price point, purchase this expecting to sell at 42, and then we see that offer count go up, which what happens when the offer count goes up, the price goes down, and we're not as profitable. So that's super important when we're searching Google. If you found this on the first search of Google, right? If this was Walgreens homepage, 20% off, really easy to find, there's a pretty good chance that other sellers are going to have the exact same reaction. They're going to find it just as easy as you did. If you had to do some digging, had to use some rewards coupons, whatever you had to do to get the price low enough to be profitable, if it wasn't, simple common sense pricing, then you probably have a better chance that the offer count isn't going to skyrocket and the price is going to tank. I'm sure you've seen that on the other listings where the price goes way down because the offer count shot way up. But if you can project that you think this listing isn't going to do that, right? It was kind of hard to find the $21 price point. So you don't think a ton of other sellers are going to, find that $21 price point as well. Then that kind of completes the final puzzle piece for me, saying, maybe I'll look at some other context, right? We'll look at the offers tab on Keepa. Maybe we'll look at buy box statistics. But really, those are the four main core information pieces that we need to make a smart buying decision. So let's look at the variation listing now, because that's going to add one extra piece to my analysis of when I'm researching products. All right, so we have our variation listing up here. There's a ton of different variations you can see here, different colors, different sizes. So where do we understand the variation analysis? Well, if we spell it out, we know we want to understand, the first thing we want to understand is, does the product sell? Well, we want to understand, does the variation sell? So basically, this is one of the first steps that we need to do. We're not looking at competition. We're not looking at anything like that. We need to understand, does this specific variation sell before we do any further analysis? We know the listing sells, right? At 5K rank, that's the very first step. If you have a variation listing and it's a 250K rank and there's 50 variations, right? There's a pretty low likelihood that that variation specifically is going to sell well, or any of the variations for that matter. But we see 5K rank in tools and home improvement. That's a great rank in basically any category. So now we need to determine, does this specific flashlight sell well? So what we need to do is go down to the Keepa variations tab and understand some of the variations data. So let's take a look. All right, so we have the variations tab open here. And basically what we want to do is scroll down until we find the specific variation that we're looking at. Luckily for us, Amazon has recently implemented this feature where they're telling you if a product sells well, they're going to tell you the amount of sales that it has. So it's kind of an estimate from them. They go in increments of 50, but it is telling you if it sells 50 times per month, that variation at least sells 50 times per month. So we're seeing our variation here. It's that gray, the gray flashlight, and we see it sells 50 times per month. So some of these other variations might not sell as well. Traditionally, we sort by the ratings, and then we take that percentage and we multiply that by, the total sales per month on this whole listing. But we do know that, there's a little bit more to it than that, because just because the listing has a ton of ratings, or variation has a ton of ratings, doesn't mean it's gotten those ratings recently, right? So we can see some of these items sells 800 times per month. We can see in the ratings history, right? It's got a consistent increase in the ratings history. Some of these we won't see that, right? We'll see this one here. This one's just a flat line, hasn't gotten one rating in the last 3 months. Not a great sign. This one here, the data is a little, hard to understand, but Amazon is telling us that it's sold 50 times in the last month, which kind of gives us that little extra confidence that we know that this specific variation does sell. So now that we check that step off the list, we're going to go right through the next steps that we know, which is how much competition is on this specific variation. So we can scroll down in Seller Amp and that will tell us. We're going to see that there are 33 other sellers in the listing. How many are priced competitively? We could say, only 4, maybe 5, 6 sellers are priced competitively here. So not a ton again. So this variation, I know it probably looks like, someone's racing to the bottom here, but for now, if we list it around that $21, $22 range, we should be priced competitively, and there's not a ton of other sellers at that same range. Next step, how likely do we think we can sell this at that $22 range? Well, it looks like we did bottom out at around $18, but the offer count did shoot up in the last month or so, and then the price started to drop. Now that we see that offer count on a slow decline, we might see that price go up, and we have seen that recently. So there is a chance that we could sell it a little bit higher than 22, but it looks like that $22 range is kind of that, that sweet spot that we'll probably be selling it at now, unless we see that offer count continue to go down. If we see the offer count, get to levels where it was, maybe 2 months ago in February, we could see the price creep up to $24, $25. But for right now, we got to assume that $22 is probably priced pretty competitively. And then of course, how easy was this to find at that $9 price range? If it's on the front page, right, you search Google and it shows up right on the first, product page that you find, there's a good chance other sellers are going to find that product. So once you start using all this different information and piecing things together, it should make understanding products a little bit easier. And hopefully you can make the analysis and feel confident in your decision to either purchase the product or skip the product and move on to the next one. So now after watching this video, you should have all the tools to analyze products and make smart buying decisions on the inventory that you're buying for your Amazon business. All you have to do now is apply it. So get out there, start sourcing, watch this video back a few times if you need help with analyzing the leads, and hopefully you're better sources because of it. If you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.